And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. There have been some major advances in the fight against Alzheimer's. We will learn more from the Alzheimer's Association's Houston and Southeast Texas chapter.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. We'll also explore how workplace anxiety affects our performance and how we can manage it better with Dr. Asim Shah, Executive Vice Chair in the Menninger Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Baylor College of Medicine.
And as Ernie, Frank, and I discuss the top headlines of the day, we want your thoughts, your questions, and concerns. Give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The United States and India are in a standoff over tariffs. India's Ministry of External Affairs issued a statement in which it decried as, quote, unjustified and unreasonable President Trump's decision to double the U.S. tariffs on Indian imports by hitting the South Asian ally with a new 25% levy. India says it will take all actions necessary to protect its national interests. NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben has more.
Trump announced a 25% tariff on Indian goods last week as part of a set of global country-by-country tariffs that will take effect Friday. This additional 25% is set to take effect in 3 weeks. Trump says the new tariff is in response to India purchasing Russian oil amid the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The White House also said the new tariff is aimed at deterring other countries from buying Russian oil. India has argued that its purchases of Russian oil have kept global prices low and that the U.S. previously encouraged those purchases. The U.S.'s major imports from India include pharmaceuticals, clothes, and stones and metals used in jewelry. Danielle Kurtzleben, NPR News, the White House.
The Kremlin says Russian President Vladimir Putin's welcomed President Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff to Moscow. They were scheduled to hold talks over Trump's economic threats if Putin continues to resist a ceasefire with Ukraine. NPR's Charles Means reports on the prospects for today's outcome.
Putin insists his army is the momentum on the battlefield, therefore he's given no indication he'll back down. But if that's the case, why get together? It seems like both sides might be looking for some kind of compromise or face-saving gesture. Perhaps not the full peace Trump is demanding, but something just enough to keep him from fulfilling his threats come Friday.
NPR's Charles Means reporting. It was 60 years ago today the Voting Rights Act was signed into law. NPR's Hansi Lowong reports the law's remaining protections against racial discrimination in elections are set to face major new challenges at the U.S. Supreme Court.
Months after the Bloody Sunday March in Selma, Alabama, then President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the landmark law for enforcing the 15th Amendment's ban on racial discrimination in voting.
This act flows from a clear and simple wrong.
Now, the Supreme Court may soon hear a case out of Louisiana that questions the constitutionality of factoring race into redistricting, and another case that could limit enforcement of protections for minority voters. Evan Milligan, who's leading a voting rights lawsuit against Alabama, says the Voting Rights Act needs supporters now more than ever.
We have to use our voices to demand that our votes are counted, not as some type of privilege, but as the right of American citizens.
Democrats have introduced bills to strengthen the Voting Rights Act that are unlikely to pass in the Republican-controlled Congress. Hansi Lowong, NPR News.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 136 points. You're listening to NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. The Texas House Democratic Caucus says a threat has been made against its members who are in Illinois participating in the quorum break. A bomb threat was reportedly made this morning at a hotel some of the state representatives are staying in, forcing an evacuation. House Democratic Caucus Chair Representative Jean Wu, along with Representatives Ramon Romero and Barbara Gervin Hawkins, issued a statement saying, quote, "We are safe, we are secure, and we are undeterred." Governor J.B. Pritzker wrote on social media that he was aware of the threat and that the incident is being investigated. Meanwhile, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says he'll go to court to have the Democratic lawmakers who have fled the state thrown out of office. News 88.7 government reporter Andrew Schneider has more.
For the second time this week, the Texas House failed to have a quorum. Attorney General Paxton said he would wait until Friday, then go to court to have the offices of any Democrats who have fled the state declared abandoned. He's argued that would let Governor Greg Abbott name their replacements. Charles Rocky Rhodes, a constitutional law professor at the University of Missouri Law School, says it's not that simple.
If you think about the idea of separation of powers, you can see why he doesn't have that authority. We don't want the governor to be able to handpick members of the legislature.
Rhodes says it's uncertain that a court would declare the offices abandoned, and the most Governor Abbott could do is call for new elections. I'm Andrew Schneider, News 88.7.
It's on to the Little League World Series for the team from Richmond.
To left, Brandon Carlisle makes the play, and Summer will have to wait. Ain't going back to school yet. Party time for Lamar Little League on to Williamsport.
That call courtesy of ESPN. Lamar defeated a team from Louisiana by a score of 5-2 to advance. Their next game is 1 week from today on August 13th in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, home of the Little League World Series. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from ARM, committed to delivering innovative, advanced computing designed to enable worldwide companies to unleash the capabilities and experiences of AI. The future of AI is built on ARM. ARM.com. This is NPR.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Happy Wednesday.
And another quiet day in the state
I know,
of Texas.
nothing going on.
Nothing happening
at all. What's the date today, Celeste?
August 6th.
August 6th.
We are getting, it's just rolling next week. We students go back to school.
When does school start?
August 12th. So Tuesday, August 12th, HISD will go back.
How do they arrive at that?
I'm not sure. You know, every year the school district will send out a couple of different variations for the calendars for the following year, and parents can pick and choose and vote, and that's when we're going back.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm from a time when we went back after Labor Day.
Me too.
Went until Labor Day, and then the Jerry Lewis telethon you wanted to stay up and watch, but then you'd watch it overnight on Sunday and Monday, and then Tuesday you had to go back to school, and it had thrown off all of your proper sleep pattern. And I bring that up because on today's show we're going to talk about how to get kids in the right pattern of behavior when it's time to go back to school.
Yes, and it's not even just kids; it's parents too. I mean, I'm having to get back into the flow of things and getting back onto a schedule. And getting on to the, because during summer in today's day and age as a parent, you are managing so many schedules. You're managing so many extracurriculars. It's not all at school. We have piano lessons. We have this and tutoring and yada, 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 yada. So even as a parent, summer is a summer break. You get a break.
Well, do you get a break, or suddenly do you have just so much more going on?
No, you really do get a break because camps will start at 9 versus school that's 7:15.
Oh, okay. So you get a breather.
You get a breather, and so we're all getting back into the swing of things.
Being barren over here, I know none of these stories.
Did you walk to school?
No, we had a bus. And the funny thing is, we were more than a mile away from our school, so we got bus service. But they had decided that they looked at the parameters, and it was at the end of the block was the distance, but our house was inside the walking distance by just a couple houses. So my mom got a part-time job as the bus monitor. And if she could be a bus monitor, they would give us a bus stop in our area. And so every day from third grade on up, my mom had to be there at 8 in the morning for the bus pickup, at noon for the kids from kindergarten, and again at 3. So she never could do anything, and she got no money. A few for that 3 hours a day she worked. And every other Friday she'd get her paycheck, and we would go downtown, and we would go to Woolworth's, and we would have lunch at the Woolworth's little
that's
counter.
very sweet.
Had to schedule even more.
There you go. Scheduling
See,
even
that
more.
was life.
I walked to school.
Did you?
Uphill both ways.
Yep. 21 miles both ways. Uphill.
But I did. Yeah. Well, and
In the snow?
then junior high, no. We carpooled to junior high and then eventually got a ride to high school.
I bet this is riveting for the listeners. I'm sure as
But
you
we do
watch us
have
on
a
YouTube,
lot
you
I
want
know.
to know.
As long as you get there, right?
But the important thing is that we always watch, and my mom always had to watch as being a bus monitor, was the weather. It made a big difference. Frank, missed that
And
segue? Oh,
we
wow.
actually have a call on this topic right now.
On school?
Yes.
We're not at that subject yet. I guess we are.
Yes. Starting this school year, students at all Houston HISD campuses will no longer be allowed to use their cell phones during the school day due to a new state law. And that's so HISD announced that its new cell phone policy on Thursday. And there you go. And we have a call from Thomas from Montgomery who would like to talk about this.
Hey, Thomas, what's on your mind today?
Well, I've read about this new Texas law banning students from having cell phones in the school. Now, apparently, Governor Abbott forgot the Robb Elementary School shootings a few years back, whenever that was, 3-4 years ago, where kids who had been wounded and seriously wounded and bleeding out were calling for help on the cell phones while the lone shooter was barricaded inside a classroom with 2 AR-15s, and he had 600 cowardly cops outside who didn't want to get shot up, so they refused to help the kids.
Yeah.
It ended that situation in no time. But it's okay for school shooters to bring guns into schools, but not to have kids with cell phones.
Thank you, Thomas, for calling. And that is something that a lot of parents and a lot of people are looking at as we move into this school year. There have been some policy changes.
We've talked
and
about
we'll
it
talk
on
about
the
it.
show.
Yeah,
More
it's a
than
law.
policy, it's law, and we have a legislator that's on the line.
I just want to wrap
Yeah.
up our call and let you know we are going to talk about it some more. So keep listening when we do rejoin the conversation because we want to explore that further.
Yes.
It's a really good point.
And yes, and the other part of something that a lot of us are monitoring is we continue our coverage of the latest news coming out of Austin regarding the redistricting map. Governor Greg Abbott on Tuesday asked the Texas Supreme Court to remove Houston Representative Jean Wu, chair of the House Democratic Caucus, from office. And this is an unprecedented escalation in Republicans' efforts to resume business in the legislature and advance new congressional maps. At least 50 House Democrats remain out of the state to prevent the chamber from obtaining a quorum, the minimum number of members necessary to undertake legislative business. This is an effort to delay the passage of new congressional lines that could net 5 more seats for Republicans. And as Frank mentioned, joining us now is former U.S. Representative Colin Allred, who served as the U.S. Representative for Texas's 32nd Congressional District from 2019 to 2025. In July, Allred announced he would run for the U.S. Senate again in 2026. Thank you for joining us today, Colin. Thanks for being here on Hello Houston.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Mr. Allred, in July, you were at a rally right here in Houston's Fifth Ward and very publicly criticized the redistricting map. Do you think the Texas Democrat lawmakers made the right decision to leave the state and break quorum?
I really do. And I think this was the last tool that they had in their toolbox. I testified against these maps. Hundreds of other Texans showed up at hearings around the state and in Austin to testify against these ridiculous maps and this outrageous power grab. They were not listened to. And so this was the final tool that these legislators had in their toolbox to try and slow this down, make sure folks know what's happening, have a discussion about how outrageous this is, that we're in the middle of our decade. This is not a normal time to be doing redistricting. It's been ordered by the White House, and they're blatantly and openly saying they're going to steal 5 congressional seats. And this should bother everyone, regardless of party. This is an attack on our democracy.
Well, Representative, it is bothering a lot of people. As we heard, the news of today is the bomb threat that happened at the hotel that some of our Democratic legislators are staying at up in Chicago. And I'm curious your thoughts on the potential for escalating violence and also what it says about the political atmosphere we are all witnessing right now.
It's such a good point. And, I was there on January 6th when that violent mob tried to prevent us in Congress from certifying the results of the election. And as the only former NFL linebacker in the room, I thought I was going to have to hold a door while my colleagues escaped. That is where we are right now in our democracy, and we have to walk back from this precipice, and we have to try and remember that we're all Americans first, and that we can have political fights, but those fights can't cross over into violence. And it's a real concern, and anyone who's been in public life in recent years knows about this. But this is something that to me is also an assault on your democracy when legislators feel like doing their legislative capacity could put their life at risk.
Well, Mr. Allred, yesterday we were talking about this, obviously, and I offhandedly said to Celeste and Ernie, do you think President Trump could order the National Guard to go in and get a plane and arrest the Democrats and put them on a plane back to Texas? And we sort of shrugged that off, but now Cornyn is saying that he wants the FBI to go and do exactly that. Where do you think this is going to go, realistically and legally? Where can it go?
Yeah. Well, let's be very clear. Breaking quorum is a legitimate legislative function that's been done multiple times, not only in Texas, but in other legislative bodies. So let's not pretend like this is, illegal or that, law enforcement has to get involved in terms of the FBI. I think John Cornyn is worried about his primary election and he's trying to posture. But this is the problem. This is part of the problem, is that all this posturing and all this trying to, blustering, somebody's out there listening and they then think, well, I'm going to send a bomb threat. And so we have to be more responsible in our discussions about these things.
Well,
and when I'm talking about this, I try and be responsible about it and say, this is what I think is happening, but I'm not, attacking somebody personally.
Well, talk about posturing. All we heard about was Epstein, and the United States representatives said, let's go home for summer and not talk about that. So they did almost exactly the same thing. The Republicans said they don't want to discuss this. We want this to drop, so we're going to just leave. It's not exactly the same thing, but this kind of just sort of truancy isn't out of the question for either party, is it?
That's right. I mean, the Speaker of the House closed the House and said, because I think we're going to lose these votes on revealing, what happened here and what is known, I'm just going to send you all home.
Right.
And, for a country of 350 million people, we need to have a Congress that's working, but it's not. And so you're right. Yeah.
Mr. Allred, I have a question in regards to timing of this. And the fact of the matter is just last month, the state went through a devastation in central Texas. We understand that there are other priorities and top issues on the agenda, such as flood warning and systems. Do you think that this was the right time for Democrats, lawmakers, to leave the state when we do have some extremely pressing issues that affect all Texans?
Thank you for saying that, because that's what the focus should have been of this special session. Every Texan I talk to doesn't think that we needed to have, this session be about redistricting and trying to force 5 districts through, creative drawing of lines to be completely unrepresentative. It should have been on flood relief, flood prevention, recovery, knowing that we're going to get 100-year floods every few years now, that we just had a record brush fire in the Panhandle last year. That was the biggest brush fire we've ever had, that we've had storms, of course, like Harvey and others hit the Houston area that are stronger than they should be. So we have to be prepared for these disasters. That's what this special session should have been about. But the governor was trying to use that as cover to then force through this agenda. And that's why these folks had to take the step that they took. But I guarantee you that they are not only ready, but more than willing to work on disaster relief and recovery. But we have not been given that opportunity in terms of the legislature. Their focus has been on something else.
Correct me if I am wrong on this, but the governor could have set the agenda in the order of first dealing with the emergency response concerns, other concerns the state has, knowing that this redistricting was going to be a touchy subject and was going to lead to trouble. He could have put that later so the actual work of the people could have gotten done first, and then we could have had this. But by setting it the way he did, it stalls everything out until this is done. So your thoughts on that? Am I accurate in this?
Exactly right. No, I mean, you're exactly right. He sets the agenda for the special session itself. this should have been one focused just on what happened in the Hill Country, and also just a broader discussion about how we've not fully invested in what we know we need to have in terms of overlapping systems for disaster preparedness and recovery. These are things that we need to be talking about as a state. I worked on it at the federal level. That should have been the focus of this session. And if they wanted to then come back and do another session on forcing through these gerrymandered maps, that would have been the responsible thing to do. But instead, trying to push it together, it is trying to mask what you're actually trying to do. And I think Texans have seen right through that.
Well, if he had put it last, I think that he knew that this walkout was going to occur. So he wasn't going to put it last because it would have kind of faded away after doing the real work of the people. It's interesting to me that Governor Abbott has said that this redistricting is all about representing the people. And yet he has let these two Democratic positions, one of which is Sylvester Turner's seat, simply sit there vacant. So he's talking out of one side of his mouth about representation, but he really isn't doing anything about it.
And that's a historic district as well, as y'all know. Beginning with Barbara Jordan, Mickey Leland, obviously Sheila Jackson Lee, my friend and colleague for many years, your former mayor, and my friend Sylvester Turner. And that seat, the people of the 18th district have had no representation for months. Well, and the election could have been called much sooner. And so and then now they're also trying to redraw it to mess with that district and also to mess with Al Green's district. This is something that folks should understand that, when they're doing this, it's not just politics. I mean, these are communities that have been fighting for representation for, in some cases, generations. Today is the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act that was only passed because John Lewis got his skull cracked walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge when he was 25 years old trying to register voters. Blood was spilt for us to get to this point where we could have a democracy that could be somewhat representative.
Let me ask you this. If anyone's watching on YouTube, they can see you're sitting in front of a wall that says Colin Allred for Texas. You are interested in getting to the Senate. If you get there, what is it you can do? What can senators do to change this? Because as we watch across the country, other states now wanting to do the same thing, and as a reaction, it looks like this whole system is going to be a clown show, actually.
That's right. It's a race to the bottom. Before I was ever in Congress, after my NFL career, I was a voting rights lawyer. And I became a voting rights lawyer because there was a line in the Supreme Court case that spoke to me that said that the right to vote was preservative of other rights. Every right is derived basically from our democracy and from your right to vote in that democracy. And so I feel incredibly strongly that we have to ban gerrymandering nationwide. This is something we can do legislatively. I had a bill when I was in Congress that we passed out of the House. We just couldn't get past the filibuster in the Senate that would have banned exactly what's happening right now. And I hate to say it, but I predicted that this would happen if we didn't pass that legislation, that folks would take advantage of this. And so we can legislatively ban this. We can also change.
Can you, though, on the federal level? Or does that interfere with the state's rights to hold their own independent elections?
Good question. And what we would do in that case, it would be limited to that in congressional seats, it's impermissible to do what they call partisan gerrymandering, which I think the Supreme Court should have already said was impermissible, to add that to what we already have in place, which is that you can't gerrymander on the basis of race. And that would prevent exactly what we're seeing right now.
Would you support a compromise like a bipartisan commission to draw lines every decade?
Yeah, that's right. That's the next part of it. And I'm sorry, thank you for mentioning that. While you ban it, you then also put in place an independent, nonpartisan commission structure for every state that's drawn by experts in that state and who know those communities, who then would draw the districts based on communities of interest and based on representation instead of trying to benefit one side or the other.
I know you've only got about a minute left with us and you've got to get on your way, but my last question to you would be, what do you see possibly happening in Texas at this point? Is there anywhere we're going, or is it just this map is going to get approved?
I just want to say that I'm incredibly proud of the folks who have taken this step to leave the state. I think that they're taking a big risk and they know that, but they're doing it for all of us. And discussions like this are important as this is going on. So I want to thank you for covering this, because folks should know what is being done and what they're trying to do, and that they are trying to take 5 majority-minority congressional districts and change them so that those voices will be silenced in these communities of color, so they will not be able to elect representatives of their choosing. And it's by design. And it includes in the Houston Metro, my district that I used to represent, Texas 32, will be completely gone. It was a majority minority district. It will be completely destroyed, and it will silence many voices in our state. And I'm glad that we're talking about this. And I think this quorum break is helping foster that conversation.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Former U.S. Representative Colin Allred, who served as a U.S. Representative for Texas's 32nd Congressional District. Thanks again for joining us on Hello Houston.
And we want to make sure everyone knows that Republicans are invited to be here with us.
Yes, we did have a YouTube comment from Vertice G, and she asked us, do you ever have conservatives on this show? And Vertice, I would like to let you know personally, yesterday I reached out for the 5th time to Wesley Hunt, who is my congressional representative of the 38th District. I also as well reached out this morning to Senator John Cornyn and have not heard a response. I have reached out to Senator Joan Huffman of District 17 as well personally. From Congressman Wesley Hunt, I received a 3-word response which said, unfortunately, he's unavailable, to which I did reply and say he is always welcome at any time on our show. Vertice, I highly implore you, please reach out, and everybody else, reach out to your representative and implore them to join us right here on Hello Houston. We would love to hear from our Republican elected officials for them to join the conversation right here on Hello Houston. They are always welcome.
A big belief we stand for here on the show is that all topics need to be discussed and talked about from all points of view so we can get a better understanding. We have been talking, as we mentioned, with a lot of Democratic representatives because they're in the heat of this, but we keep that invitation open for the other side of the aisle to also join us.
And also we understand that our Republican elected officials are right now the ones making those decisions, and more than ever, we want to hear from them. But coming up on Hello Houston, we will talk to Richard Elbein, CEO of the Alzheimer's Association Houston and Southeast Texas chapter, about some major advances in their fight against the disease. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
Hello, I'm Josh Adams, General Manager of Houston Public Media. This station just lost $2.2 million in federal support annually. To keep our station strong, we've launched the Resiliency Fund, powered by community members just like you. Your support will help bridge the funding gap and ensure these programs remain free and accessible to everyone. If public media and this station matter to you, now is the time to act. Support the Resiliency Fund today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
I'm Jeremy Hobson. Next time on The Middle, one of the stated goals of President Trump's trade war is to bring industrial jobs back to the United States and to usher in a golden age for U.S. manufacturing. But in an age of artificial intelligence and automation, not to mention cheap overseas labor, many experts believe that's a pipe dream. So what do you think? Is a reindustrialized America realistic? And what would it look like for you? We're taking your calls next time on The Middle.
You can hear it tomorrow night at 8 p.m.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from attorney mediator Ron Bankston, providing in-person, video conferencing, and hybrid mediation and arbitration services. More information is available at ronbankston.com.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV 8 at 7, Nature travels to Costa Rica to examine its biodiversity and the hummingbird effect. Then at 8, Nova looks at the ancient builders of the Amazon. Tonight on TV 8 or stream on the PBS app.
Support comes from UT Health Houston, home to Dr. Ricardo Mascara, who developed a comprehensive care clinic to improve outcomes for children with complex medical needs. More at uth.edu/manyfaces.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
A major clinical trial led by the Alzheimer's Association and known as the U.S. Pointer Study has found that healthy lifestyle changes like improving your diet, staying active, and keeping your brain engaged can actually slow cognitive decline as we age. And Houston played a key role as one of just 5 regions across the country where this groundbreaking study was carried out. Joining us now to talk about what this means for the future of Alzheimer's prevention is Richard Elbein, CEO of the Alzheimer's Association Houston and Southeast Texas chapter. Richard, welcome to the program.
Again.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate being here.
Yeah.
I guess my first question, just from looking at even the introduction on this, is did we notice any difference between the 5 regions? Was it broken up that way to see if area and atmosphere and surrounding social communities had any difference?
Well, so far, all that's been released is the top line results from this study. Okay. So at this point, what we know are the top line, and over the next probably several years, we'll be crunching the data many different ways. And one of those ways, I'm sure, will be to look at changes or differences between the regions. So the 5 parts of the country that were involved, Houston, Chicago, Northern California, Rhode Island, and North Carolina. And I do know that some of the criteria to participate in the study had to do with current health and lifestyle. And Northern California struggled to find people who were sedentary as compared with other parts of the country where there were many more of us who were sedentary and eligible for this study. So we know that during the recruitment period, there were differences. I can also tell you that the Alzheimer's Association, which funded this study to the tune of $50 million, made a commitment that there would be significant representation from underrepresented communities that typically are not included in health and research studies. And so across the country, there was more than a 30% participation from underrepresented communities. Houston really saved the study in some ways because Houston, because of our diverse population, we had 46% of our study of the 455 people from the Houston area. 46 were from diverse and underrepresented communities.
Oh, that's great. One other thing at first blush as I look at it, oftentimes when we talk about Alzheimer's, I think a lot of people think genetics, and reading through this, hearing diet, activity, brain engagement could actually be beneficial. So is that a light bulb for you folks? Is this something you expected to see? Is it something we already knew basically? And how much is the play between what we do behaviorally and what's already in our systems?
Well, okay, those are
there
lots
you go.
of
Take it away.
questions. So I would say that the reason we committed the kinds of dollars to this study was because we believed that lifestyle could significantly bend the curve for people who are at risk of future cognitive impairment or dementia. So, and the study was based on a number of prior studies that perhaps looked at one aspect at a time. For example, there was a study that had looked at diet and shown that diet by itself seemed to be protective and be beneficial for brain health. There have been a number of studies that have looked at exercise or activity and suggested or demonstrated that there was a benefit. And I think everyone has heard that somehow brain stimulation through online brain games or something might be protective or beneficial. Also, we know that social engagement, again, in some studies, seems to have demonstrated benefit. And then the 5th component is the medical management of chronic conditions that increase risk. So, for example, managing blood pressure, diabetes, obesity. So there are a number of medical management opportunities to reduce risk. So each one of those seem to have some benefit independently. And then the question is, if you combine them all together, do you get a synergistic effect that's better than just the addition of each one by itself? And we'll be, again, crunching the numbers for a long time, but we were delighted to see that there is a significant benefit to lifestyle interventions that for people who are at risk of cognitive decline or dementia, that they benefit from this lifestyle intervention.
And so, other than perhaps having a family member or family members, I know some people can take a 23andMe test to see if they have a genetic variant for early onset or late onset Alzheimer's. Is there any other testing that can go on? I know there's been some in the works as far as blood tests to see if a person is likely, or at least more likely, to develop Alzheimer's. Where are we in that?
Yeah, so as it relates to first of all, genetic risk. So there are, I guess, two kinds of genetic risk, and one would be a very small percent of the population that truly has a genetic risk, that about half the people in the family will develop dementia, and usually it's at a very early age. So it's sometimes in the 40s or 50s, and those folks, they would know that their family has this significant genetic risk. It's less than, I mean, it's in the low single digits of the population. The other genetic risk is one like we would talk about heart disease, that if you know that you have members of the family who've developed heart disease, your risk of developing heart disease is greater. And yet we know that as people age, their risk of developing heart disease is pretty significant. That's why so much of America is on cholesterol-lowering medication, because of the risk. So the single biggest risk for developing Alzheimer's is aging. So if we were to talk about, the risk factors, obviously having a parent, a first-degree relative who's developed Alzheimer's or dementia is a risk factor, but aging is a bigger risk factor.
Richard, I understand that aging and lifestyle, but from what I understand, there's been a recent breakthrough with lithium, which is a treatment for bipolar disorders that could be a key to Alzheimer's disease. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Do you know about that?
I don't know about that. I'm not familiar with that study. And I was just in Toronto at the Alzheimer's Association International Research Conference, and I can tell you, I didn't attend any of the lectures that talked about lithium, so I'll have to get back with you on that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just came out in the Washington Post. I read about it also. It
just came out this morning, I believe. And, we did get another question from one of our YouTube commentators. Nicole L. wants to know, are we seeing any changes on age of diagnosis? Are people getting diagnosed younger because we have a better understanding?
So great. That's a great question. And, there also, you asked the question about blood tests. So just to be clear, at this point, there is an approved blood test. That blood test is a diagnostic tool. So someone who presents at their doctor with, they're complaining of cognitive changes. One of the diagnostic tools that now is in the toolbox would be a blood test that would confirm the presence of the two proteins that are associated with Alzheimer's disease. There is not currently a screening test for Alzheimer's. So there's not a blood test that you would just go in for your normal physical and they would do a blood test in the same way they would do a blood test to look at elevated blood sugar as a risk for diabetes or elevated cholesterol. So that does not exist yet. I would say that as the treatments, so currently we have two now effective treatments that reduce the presence of amyloid in the brain and seem to postpone the deterioration from Alzheimer's. So as we see more interventions, more therapies, and I think this lifestyle intervention will also will move us along that continuum. As there are better treatments, there will be fewer barriers to trying to find out if a person is at risk or early in the disease. So yes, I think people are more willing to make an appointment and go and get some kind of evaluation if they feel like there is some kind of slippage in their cognitive abilities. And I think we're going to continue to see that. And of course, at some point, hopefully in the near future, there will actually be a screening tool for Alzheimer's in the same way as there are for a lot of other chronic diseases.
Richard, let me take you back to the study. When we talk about, we're seeing the positive benefits of these behaviors, oftentimes in studies like that, we're looking at percentages that seem relatively small when you really look at it, as opposed to really a practical solution. So people who eat a healthy diet and stay active and keep their brain engaged are at like a 2% less risk of, and so that's positive in that we're seeing it in the right direction, but it's really rather slim. What are we looking at in this study? Is it a significant difference, and does it really ultimately matter?
So for those of us who have had a first-degree relative who has developed Alzheimer's, which I think some of you have, and yes. I know I have, having lived through that experience, I would say that a reduction in the risk of developing dementia and maintaining a healthy brain is worth the intervention. So the apparent benefit of a structured lifestyle intervention from this study, just for 2 years. People only did this lifestyle change for 2 years, and it apparently postpones those cognitive changes for 1 to 2 years. Okay. And all they did was this study for 1 to 2 years. So, so if we don't know what's going to happen. Everyone who's in the study was invited to participate in an ongoing, so to continue to follow to see what the impact is.
So you would say
longer
it's significant benefit then?
I think it's significant. And, what we know is what's good for the heart is good for the head. And we know the number one killer in America is heart disease. So, it's heart disease, cancer, stroke. So wait, 1 and 3, heart disease and stroke. And then Alzheimer's is number 6. So if we think about the top killers in the country, and if you make a lifestyle change that includes exercise and diet and cognitive stimulation and social engagement, it not only will help the risk of future decline in the brain, but it also will improve your risk of heart disease. So
win.
Yeah, I think that it's...
If we're already in the throes of Alzheimer's or dementia and you incorporate these changes, do we see a stalling? Do we see even a recession of the illness, or nothing like that?
So this study was done with healthy older adults, 60 to 79 years old. They were people who did not have any presence of cognitive decline when they were recruited for the study. So we can't speak to what the impact would be for those who already have cognitive decline or dementia. We don't know the answer. I think certainly that's yet to come, but at this point we don't know.
There have been other studies, though. Have you seen anything out there, and you even talked about just being at the conference, anything promising for people who already are in cognitive decline? Is there anything on the horizon you're seeing, or is still our best approach at this is offsetting the beginning of it?
So I think the biggest hope, which again is a couple medications that have been approved just in the last year or so, have been medications that slow the progression of the disease, that actually treat the disease, clear the amyloid from the brain, and seem to have they seem to reduce the progression. So it makes me think a little bit of early in the promising treatments in HIV. If you can slow the decline, you can wait for the next effective treatment that may be able to be added to it. So I find that the most hopeful. Of course, anytime you can incorporate lifestyle interventions, how can that be a bad thing? And in the future, hopefully we'll know just how beneficial it is for people who already have
those watching
dementia.
this on YouTube can see behind you. It says vote yes on 14. What does that mean? What are we voting yes for?
So it's kind of an exciting thing. As you may know, the state of Texas this session passed a bill called DPRIT, Dementia Prevention Research. So the state of Texas is looking to commit $3 billion to dementia research over the next 10 years. And that bill goes before the voters on November 4th. It's Proposition 14. And we think, my goodness, you can never have too much research to try and stop this terrible disease. And so we're very strongly advocating for passage of of the DPRIT bill, which is Proposition 14.
Yeah, you get nowhere without research. And by the way, that lithium research was done by Harvard University, which a lot of people have heard that they're under attack. Mm-hmm. And we don't realize how important our universities are to research and this kind of research. So you got my vote. I'll say that.
Thank you, Richard.
That's right. Richard Elbein is the CEO of the Alzheimer's Association, Houston and Southeast Texas chapter. Richard, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for including me.
Yeah, good to see you.
And coming up, have you ever had workplace anxiety? We're going to chat about that. Stay with us as Hello Houston
have it right now.
continues.
With federal support gone, Houston Public Media needs a stronger foundation for the future. The Houston Public Media Resiliency Fund is our response to ensure this service remains strong, stable, and community-powered. Your gift today helps us stay on the air tomorrow and the day after that. Give now to the Resiliency Fund at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
Now to the Resiliency Fund at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Giving poor families more money is going to help poor families. That's self-evident. But why would you think a few $1,000s a year would make a meaningful difference in a family's life when poor kids are up against so many things?
I'm Natalie Kitroeff. That's Today on the Daily from the New York Times.
You can hear that tonight at 7 o'clock.
The president recently fired the head of the agency that collects data about the U.S. economy. He claimed without evidence that she manipulated a recent jobs report. That unprecedented move has led to major concerns that future reports could involve political manipulation. How the government collects this data and the value of having independent, reliable statistics about the economy. That's next time on 1A.
You can listen to 1A at 2 o'clock today on News 88.7.
Support comes from the Eternal Gandhi Museum, Houston, highlighting the power of nonviolent conflict resolution through examples of peace leaders worldwide. Now open. Field trips and group visits available. More at egmh.org. Houston Public Media presents The Moth Grand Slam, August 12th at River Oaks Theater. Doors open at 7 p.m. The theme of the night is Childish, stories about feeling young. Tickets at houstonpublicmedia.org/themoth.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Most working adults have experienced at one point in their career workplace anxiety, that feeling of dread, the knot in your stomach, the negative thoughts running through your mind. Sometimes that happens while at work, and sometimes that happens while at home. The good news is it's totally normal to sometimes feel this type of anxiety, but suffering from anxiety at work can seriously affect your ability to do your job. And joining us now to explain the causes of workplace anxiety, how to manage it, and when you really should seek professional help is Dr. Asim Shah, professor and executive vice chair in the Menninger Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Baylor College of Medicine. Dr. Shah, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting.
So why don't we just start? What are some of the triggers to know if you're experiencing workplace anxiety and that you're not just having a bad week?
Yeah. So first of all, workplace anxiety is rather very common, and a lot of people exhibit it. Even according to some studies, 80% of the people may have had workplace anxiety sometime in their life as exhibited by stress. And some studies even show that 83% of the US workforce may have had some sort of stress at work. So the triggers, as you said, could be anything. It could be more work at your workplace, a lack of interest, depression, anxiety, change in your leadership, change in your workplace colleagues. It could be anything like that, or even change in environment at your home. If there's home stress, that can cause workplace anxiety. So anything like change at your workplace, change at your home, and change in your health status, all those changes can cause workplace anxiety. Like I said, it's extremely common, and it can exhibit in any way or fashion.
Well, that's the other question. Are there any parallels between workplace anxiety and stress or even depression? What are some of those kind of common ailments? But then also, how can you differentiate them?
Yeah, there are a lot of parallels between that. If you think about workplace anxiety, the key is general stress, because stress is the key. And of course, it impacts your home life and your life in general. And the first key is stress. The second key is anxiety. Mm-hmm. And the third part is the burnout. So stress, anxiety, burnout, all three are combined. And they can subsequently result in depression also. Now, if you go on the other side, if somebody has pre-existing anxiety, pre-existing depression, and there's a slight change in their workplace environment, that can cause workplace anxiety very quickly.
Right.
So they are kind of related, interrelated in any form or shape. Also, people may have signs and symptoms like feeling anxious or nervous, physical changes, sweating, trembling, thinking about a task. If somebody is anxious, you give them a task and their leadership or boss is not friendly, they can get anxious. So those things can happen rather very quickly for those people. And so things like that in a person who's already had anxiety can be devastating.
So recognizing it is one thing. What are the better ways to deal with it? Mm-hmm. Because you don't want it just to be popping Xanax every day. I mean, that has its own issues. Maybe you do want to be popping it, but that could be a serious problem.
You do not want to be popping Xanax, period. Not at all.
Right. So how can we deal with our stress at work, and how can we deal with other people's stress at work?
What if you have two co-hosts that's stressed? Asking for a friend, Dr. Shah, asking for a friend.
We did have a comment.
You two are the best co-hosts. There's no way you can be stressed.
Oh, never. We had a comment came in from YouTube. Alex Garza says, it's a great topic today. When layoffs start happening, you can feel anxiety throughout the whole office. How often is it not really just what's happening to you, but the whole environment in which you're in then leads to anxiety?
That's a very good question. So first thing is, of course, joking aside, we can control our anxiety. We can control our environment, but unfortunately, we cannot control others' anxiety in others' environment. So we have to focus, unfortunately, or fortunately, on ourselves. So we need to think about the strategies we need to use to manage this anxiety, right? So the few things we need to do is we need to set some sort of boundaries. And the boundaries could be that, what are we going to do when we are getting burnout or so? We need to have healthy habits, whether it's balancing a diet or exercise, or if somebody unfortunately is using a lot of caffeine or alcohol or substances, we need to cut those. Organization helps in workplace anxiety. Mm-hmm. Time management helps in workplace anxiety. Communication, people don't communicate. You mentioned layoffs or so. If the same layoff happens with proper communication, proper planning, perhaps the anxiety can be less. Proper planning, communication. Of course, there is no planning for a layoff, but if there is ample time given, the person may be able to look for another job or so, as opposed to you have a layoff just before Christmas. Those kind of things, or some supportive environment, mindfulness, relaxation, focusing on your goals. So, you need to think about those kind of things. And then the coping mechanisms. Everybody's coping mechanisms are different. There are certain generic coping mechanisms we use, which can be deep breathing exercises, mindfulness, as I mentioned, grounding exercises, which anybody can use. But certain people have different triggers, and you need to identify your triggers. Is your trigger when you go home? Is your trigger when you see your leadership or your boss? Is your trigger when you are with friends or specific friends? Find your triggers and then after you identify your triggers, work on your triggers.
Yeah. You know what helps? What helps me with anxiety is when things start piling up, making a list and make a list of things to do.
And check it off.
This is what helps with school work. It helps with chores at home. It helps with tasks at work. And yes, go one at a time. Because when I was doing the weather and all hell was breaking loose, it was like, let's just get through the 4. Then let's just get through the 5. Right. Then just get through the 6. It's just be, as you say, just compartmentalize and take it one step at a time.
Okay, now I'm going to jump in with this other slant. You know, sometimes it's just out of our control. And we are sinking fast because around us things are happening, and there are people that have control over our lives. Boy, here I go into my dark spiral.
You're right.
People have control over our lives, and we have no say in what they're about to do. And the anxiety builds, and there's nothing you can actually do to change the situation in the short term. What's going to happen is going to happen. How are we supposed to process those feelings, especially if you're in a place where you see layoffs coming, where you know funding is short, where people are being let go?
Funding. That slipped in.
But I mean, how?
I've never heard that word lately. This is a new word.
But I mean, if you're in a government job, and all across, we're seeing a lot of this. But it is out of our control. Shouldn't we be anxious?
Which I do want to piggyback really quickly onto Ernie, because is leaving your job the best answer? Because a lot of people say, I'm ready to leave.
Okay. Let me answer both. So first was, uncertainty or environment or toxic work relationship. So the number one cause of work-related anxiety is job-related stress. And when you think about job-related stress, it could be uncertainty, toxic work environment, deadlines, workload, all of those combined. So sometimes the second question you ask, perhaps in that job-related environment, the best answer is perhaps leaving the job, because if your job is so toxic that it's causing so much anxiety, maybe the answer is for you to leave that job. Not for everybody, for those people who cannot avoid or control those. The second cause of work-related anxiety is the interpersonal issues. As they say, people do not leave the job, they leave their bosses, right? So interpersonal relationship, conflicts with your supervisor or colleagues is the second leading cause of work-related anxiety and causes social anxiety. And if you cannot resolve it, perhaps, unfortunately, you may have to leave your job. Now, you mentioned...
I was going to say, let me flip this around and say, if you're a manager of people, if you head a department, if you're in charge of whatever, what can you do to reduce this for your workers?
Yeah. So I am a manager and I have, over 100 direct reportees and then 300.
So should we talk to them about it and how well you're handling it for them?
Absolutely. You're welcome to. If you need numbers, I'm happy to give it to you. We have the highest retention rate actually in our department. But what we do is that we do multiple things. We have yearly retreats in which they can vent out their feelings. We are not present. They talk about it. They talk about what they like, what they don't like. So you need to give them, way outs in which they can vent out their feelings. We have to have an open door policy in which they can come and talk about their feelings. And if an employer is good and they don't like you, that's perfectly fine. As long as they're a good employer, they don't have to like you. You don't have to like them. They need to just be doing a good job. So not everybody would be able to like you, or you will be able to like them. As long as they're a good employer, I think that's okay.
Well, I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends who stopped watching the news.
Yeah,
because of that.
And that's one
so
of them.
Anxious.
And the other thing, Dr. Shah, really quickly, there's still a lot of stigmas. Men experiencing this type of anxiety at work, they're looked as weak. Women are looked as emotional. What would you recommend somebody who really doesn't feel like they can talk to their supervisor? Just some quick, like you said, coping mechanisms.
If you don't know what to do, the best is try to control and try to summarize what you need to talk. Pick one battle. Think about one thing you need to talk. Start slowly, pick one battle as opposed to go with everything. You're not going to go anywhere.
Pick that one battle. Dr. Asim Shah, professor and executive vice chair in the Menninger Department of Psychiatry, and Behavioral Sciences at Baylor College of Medicine. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Shah.
Thank you.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll continue diving into the top stories of the day. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston Daily Newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media.
Anyway, I can get a recording of
Opinions
this?
expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support Houston Public Media by donating a vehicle you no longer need. We'll take it in any condition. It's free to you, easy to do, and it could mean hundreds of dollars in support. Visit houstonpublicmedia.org/cars to learn more. Thanks.
This is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston. News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 12 o'clock.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, we'll continue diving into the top stories of the day, starting with Texas Governor Greg Abbott filing an emergency petition to remove State Rep Gene Wu, who he is calling the ringleader of the derelict Democrats. I'm Frank Billingsley.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. As we gear up to go back to school next week, we'll share some helpful tips to get your family school ready with Dr. Mehul Patel, a pediatrician from Memorial Hermann.
And I'm Ernie Manous. Plus, we'll also take a look at how California is influencing aspects of Texas's culture and politics with journalist and Texas Monthly contributor Christopher Hooks.
And we want to hear from you, so give us a call or text us 713-440-8870 or email us talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel. Just go to hellohouston.org and click the big orange banner.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. 5 soldiers at Fort Stewart were shot today in an active shooter incident on the Army installation in southeast Georgia. In a post on Facebook, Fort Stewart says the soldiers were treated on site and moved to Wynn Army Community Hospital for further treatment. The Army says law enforcement was dispatched to the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team just before 11 a.m. local time and that the shooter was arrested about 40 minutes later. The Army says there is no active threat to the community. Attorney General Pam Bondi has reportedly launched a grand jury investigation into the Obama administration's handling of the now decade-old probe of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. This was first reported by Fox News and confirmed by other outlets. NPR has not independently confirmed the reporting, and the Department of Justice declined to comment. But as NPR's Domenico Montanaro reports, it indicates a larger trend that blurs the lines between the Justice Department, which has historically been mostly independent, and the White House.
He's had tensions with past attorneys general. He's shown a willingness to fire them when they do something that he disagrees with. We know that there was tension, obviously, with Trump and his first attorney general, Jeff Sessions, the former Alabama Republican senator. And Sessions was the first Republican senator to endorse Trump's 2016 campaign. There was also a very bad falling out Trump had with Bill Barr after Barr told him the 2020 election wasn't stolen. Pam Bondi, she's taken a decidedly different approach.
NPR's Domenico Montanaro reporting. The administration has announced plans to cancel more research to develop mRNA vaccines, the type used to help fight COVID-19. Here's NPR's Rob Stein.
Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says the federal government is canceling about $500 million in mRNA vaccine research. Kennedy had already canceled more than $700 million in contracts to develop an mRNA vaccine to protect the country against the next pandemic. Kennedy questions the safety and effectiveness of mRNA vaccines. Most experts say mRNA vaccines are very safe and effective. Kennedy says the administration is focusing on a different technology that he says mimics natural immunity. Most experts consider that to be outdated technology. Rob Stein, NPR News.
The White House plans to impose more tariffs on India for buying Russian oil. This morning, President Trump signed an executive order to tack on a 25% levy to Indian imports, in addition to the 25% tariff the United States has already imposed on its South Asian ally, which goes into effect this Friday. The order says the newest tariff will take effect in 21 days. Indian officials point to the United States previously encouraging India to purchase Russian oil to help stabilize global energy markets. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. Local political analysts are questioning the threat recently made by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton to have a court help Republican leaders remove Democrats who recently fled the state. Paxton says he would seek out court action on Friday should they not return, establish a quorum, and participate in the special legislative session focused on redrawing the state's political maps. Mark Jones is a political science professor at Rice University and was a guest on Houston Matters.
The reality is this is just the governor and the attorney general showing President Trump that they're fighting as hard as they can against this Democratic gambit and trying to put pressure on Democrats, knowing that they more likely than not aren't going to be coming home for the first special session. But for that second special session, the idea is enough is enough.
Paxton says he is giving the Democrats until Friday to return. Meanwhile, 2 Texas House Democrats were forced to evacuate their hotel in Illinois this morning after a bomb threat. Representatives John Busey of Austin and Ann Johnson of Houston say they're safe after they had to evacuate the hotel they were staying at. They are among the more than 50 Texas Democratic lawmakers participating in the quorum break. 4 candidates have announced their intention to run for an open at-large Houston City Council seat in November. They are former District D City Council member Dwight Boykins, business owner Al Lloyd, attorney Alejandra Salinas, and previous City Council candidate Obes Noabara. The seat is open during an off year for municipal elections because council member Letitia Plummer is running to replace Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo. Plummer says she hopes her replacement maintains the diversity of the 16-member city council.
My seat has historically been a seat that's been represented by a person of color, primarily African Americans. And so I do believe, having some diversity on those at-large seats is something that's really going to be important.
The deadline for candidates to file to appear on the ballot is September 3rd. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, which monitors safe driving habits to determine a personalized rate at Progressive.com. Not available in California or from all agents. This is NPR.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Welcome back to the second hour of Hello Houston. We were busy that first hour.
And we were so busy that Ernie did not mention it's Hump Day.
It is Hump Day. You mentioned Hump Day. I'm not big into Hump Day.
Well, something. You always say it's Wednesday. It's the middle of the week.
Right. But you know what? I'm taking Friday off again for vacation. I'm already past the hump. I'm sliding into the weekend already. It also is another important day. I know I'm jumping ahead to these, but it's National Root Beer Float Day. Who doesn't love a root beer float?
Me. That's a good way to ruin root beer and ice cream at the same time.
Not surprised at all.
Talk about workplace anxiety.
That is really horrible. If anybody that's ever... Oh, I love a root beer float.
Really?
Yes. I don't like work anxiety. But, if you've ever... It is really terrible if you've ever experienced real work anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
It's especially if it's between
in television? There's none of that.
A coworker. No, but not necessarily between work dynamics. Oh, yeah. Gosh, I'm a people person. Shocker. I really like people. Yeah. And so I don't like to have conflict like that at all.
I have worked in really bad work environments and in a previous life. And it was so bad. And we kind of had to, all the staff had to come together and have that supervisor reprimanded. And so we took it to the upper management. Upper management came back and said, well, the supervisor said, you guys are all the problem. Shortly after that, I left that job. And the best thing was that supervisor like 3 months later, locked herself in her office and wouldn't come out for a whole weekend because she was scared of getting fired. And I was like, I think we've proven our point. There was something going on there.
Well, you know, I have also worked in different newsrooms, and there is something I had never experienced any kind of like coworker issue. I get along with everybody, like for the most part. But one time I did have one colleague who, I mean, it was like, it didn't matter if I said good morning, they were upset. And you know.
Yeah. Well, it's because we're forced into these social and working situations with a group of random people. And so you never know what the mix is going to give you. Here I have been amazingly fortunate time and time again with the different teams that I've worked with. And I do get to work with you two every day. I'll just leave it at that. No.
Which reminds me of you too, but by the way.
People ask us all the time, do you guys really get along? Or is that, and I mean, it's the same both on air and off. We're always doing what we do.
Teasing each other.
Yep. I used to get that with Dominique and Bill all the time.
Yeah, well, you had a great working team.
Oh, yeah.
There.
We had dinner parties, and our spouses all liked each other. And
I was thinking about
their kids, and they knew our kid. I mean, it was...
With your old anchor team, you used to have these really nice dinners at your house. Unless you and Celeste are doing them without me, they haven't been continuing.
Don't tell them, Frank. Don't tell them. They happen to be scheduled on bid days.
I'm on vacation.
We'll have to make sure that Celeste Nanny is available for the kids.
Yes. Miss Gladys is always available. Okay. But you know what, Al, speaking of kids... Starting this school year, students at all Houston ISD campuses, and we were talking about this earlier, we did receive a call. So this is also top of mind locally, but also from a state perspective. Starting this year, students at all 8 Houston ISD campuses will no longer be allowed to use their cell phones during the school day due to new state law. HISD announced its new cell phone policy Thursday and said it would allow for a more distraction-free learning environment. And according to the district, the policy prohibits the use of all personal communication devices. So that means cell phones, smartphones, tablets, headphones, earbuds, and any other electronic device that can be used for communication. You can chime in at 713-440-8870. What do you think about this new policy that is going to go into effect this school year as we head back to the school?
In the first hour, we had a call from Thomas who called in and was concerned with this. And he brought up a really good point when he looks at different violence that's happened in schools. And sometimes it's those cell phones that the kids call out on that have alerted or at least given us a record of what's going on or given the ability for law enforcement to know what's happening in the moment in the classroom.
Well, presumably teachers would still have cell phones.
Yeah,
to be able to do some of that.
And we also received an off-air comment. Mike from West Houston said, cell phones are an emergency beacon for the kids. I got 2 grandkids in school and their phones are for emergencies. Who else can they rely on without them?
Well, they do make cell phones that just do emergency phone calls.
Yes.
So perhaps that is the way to go if that's really the reason that we needed them to have cell phones, right?
And I understand, right? And I
understand. Should there just be a button in the classroom that anybody can push that says 911?
They
we
do.
need you
I think
here.
they have emergency.
So they're trying to approach it that way. I think the cell phones have done a lot in recording bullying and fighting, because these kids are recording these things so that when there's dispute, there's some video proof.
And schools have cameras. So a lot of times administrators will go to the cameras that are installed all around the schools and they can defer to their actual footage. As a parent, I'm broken on this because on the one side, I know whenever I was the PTO president at my daughter's school, sometimes I would be getting texts from parents that are like, oh my gosh, there's something happening. My child just texted me. And it would be as simple as, they're going to be getting ready for a fire alarm or, some basic things. So I see the downside of it personally. I am fully okay with the fact that there's going to be no cell phones or tablets or those type of things. I think that they should absolutely not during a classroom setting when you're learning math. In those type situations, I would hope when we send our kids to school that the adults in the room would be able to handle an emergency properly. Obviously, we felt that way and we saw what happened in Uvalde. But for the most part, I'm hoping lessons were learned here. And so I think this is a move in the right direction.
Well, 713-440-8870. You can join the conversation right now as we continue to talk about this. Frank,
I went to a Broadway show up in New York, and there was nudity in it. It's called Take Me Out.
Yeah, the baseball thing.
Yeah, the baseball thing. And they took our cell phones and put it into a locked case. And, it's like, well, okay.
And that's it, right?
So I can see how
a little slightly different situation. They were worried you were going to bootleg the show and video record this scene that was quite talked about, or the scenes that were talked about, and then it goes out. But it does bring up a question about these phones in culture and in our society and how they're used and what we capture and what's okay to be shot and what's not. In schools, though, to go back to Celeste's point, it's the whole concept of how it interferes with the learning process, but at the same time, what is the security benefit? And to go to your point, Frank, I like the idea of the phones. I looked at one for my mom that only had 4 buttons on it. It was like police, emergency, and then you could have 2 pre-programmed numbers.
My point before you got there was that couldn't they have some sort of take the phones away during class and give it back for lunch period or recess?
And I think they do.
Right? I believe so.
Okay, well, then that was left out of the story.
I believe that it is. That's a great question. In that, I do believe that the time is during learning, during the 7:30 to.
You could take it to school. They just might take it when you go into the classroom.
Or they might put it in your backpack, or they put it away.
Okay.
Which I think they already do, but I think it's going to be, a lot more strict. And the other part of it is my daughter, I get a call from the nurse every once in a while, and I'm like, Evelyn, okay, we'll see. But we do have a call from Candace from Kingwood, and she's a mom and a teacher. Candace, welcome to Hello Houston. What is your comment?
Hello. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to talk about what you guys were saying as far as the fears of children not being able to reach their parents. So before I was a teacher, last year was my first year teaching. I have a son in junior high. I had a lot of those fears too, a lot with the gun violence and different things that are going on, wanting him to always have that emergency kind of resource. But as a teacher and being in the classroom, I 100% support the no cell phone policy, mainly because it is such a huge distraction for teachers and for students.
Yeah.
A lot of video recording of fights and bullying that are being posted online. And we do have an emergency call button that anybody can push. So if there is an emergency, students still can bring their cell phones to school and have them in their backpacks. They just cannot have them in their pockets or on them.
Tell me if I'm wrong, Candace. It seems like that cell phone access would be an easy way to cheat.
Oh, for sure. And that's another, I've caught several students cheating, or they'll have their ear pods in. That was another thing that I'm glad we're getting rid of, because they can have pre-recordings on their phone, and they'll even have their phone in their backpack, and it will tell them answers or.
Oh,
or
wow.
like
I
Oh my God,
imagine.
that is, I never thought of that.
Suddenly Frank wants to go back to school.
As a teacher, I
make
I
A
don't even
pluses.
like it whenever I'm speaking to somebody just in a conversation and they have AirPods in.
Yeah.
I can't imagine as a teacher. Candace, thank you so much for giving us a call and sharing your perspective with us. That's really interesting.
Well, I wear hearing aids. I could do that because I can hear my phone through my hearing aids. So there are ways, I guess, to. So maybe even taking the cell phone away isn't the right thing unless you take away the
All
earbuds.
devices.
All devices.
All
Everything.
devices. And to clarify, HISD Chief of Schools, Sandy Macy, said students are allowed to keep their phones powered off in their backpacks or in a designated storage area during the school day. And that's
who monitors powered off? I mean, isn't that? I mean, Sandy, I would love your comment on this because who is every teacher in every class every day has got to say, "Show me your phone."
No, I
mean, how
think
does
they
that
would say,
work?
"Okay, now's the time.
Just out of the
turn
way.
off your cell phones, put them away, put them in your
Okay.
backpacks, and let's get started." That kind of situation. We do have a call from Devin from Katy. Devin, welcome to Hello Houston. What is your comment or question?
So my comment is the district where we are, Katy ISD, has also instituted a no cell phone policy per the state regulations. And as a parent and a scout leader, I can say that we don't have our scouts going outdoors with their phones, and they're just fine. They're doing great with that. And so not having them in school, I think, is actually a great thing for everything you guys mentioned already about having more focus and less distractions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do,
Thank you.
We'll talk a little bit more about that. I do want to clarify a point we said a little earlier. We checked into it according to a story being reported at HPM that lunch accessibility is not an option for the phones. You can't turn them on at lunchtime. You can't use them at lunch
Which
either.
I think is also fine, right? I mean, especially if we just heard from one of our callers who was saying she was a teacher and they're recording fights and it's a distraction. You know what? Chit chat with your friends. Eat your lunch and chit chat with your friends.
And Devin brings up a good point. All three of us grew up without the cell phones in our hands every minute. Celeste had it a little sooner than we did, but
I did get a cell phone when I was a junior in high school.
right. But life went on without them, and so it is doable. It is
We
possible.
wrote notes to each other and got in trouble for that.
Yeah, the teacher would
Passing
grab the
notes.
note.
We did that
and
The old
too.
passing notes, you know.
We are that.
713-440-8870. Pam is on the line from the Woodlands. Pam, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking with every distraction that a cell phone provides, you have to ramp up on that task again. So you're constantly ramping up after a distraction and really not making very good progress on a task.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a great point.
I'm getting the feeling our listeners are agreeing with this ordinance that, you know what, let's keep those phones out of the
Well,
kids'
we haven't heard
hands
from
in
any
school.
kids.
And we also
You know?
know,
I mean,
yeah,
this is
I
going
can tell
to
you what they're
affect.
going to think.
They'll text us.
I
They're on
also
their
Right.
feel like we understand the implications cell phones and social media have on children and teens' mental health. I'm also thinking that this could set a culture where we know younger and younger kids are getting cell phones, that this will, if third graders don't have cell phones or you don't know, then my kid won't come home and be like, Mommy, I want a cell phone because X person has one.
Oh, yeah, yeah. But I will say this. The best disciplinarian in the world is the cell phone. You threaten to take that cell phone away, that matters. You can send them to their room, they don't care. No TV,
Screen
they
time.
don't care.
Yeah.
But you say,
Screen
I'm taking
time.
that cell phone, and what can I do to make that not happen?
Right.
Adults are the same way.
The same way. Oh, wow. Our addiction's real. I'm not sitting here saying I'm any better than that.
Your son's four?
4.
4. How much is he involved in screen time at that early age?
Not really. I'm pretty strict when it comes, like, we don't take out our iPad unless we're traveling. So that's always off. And I say, oh, it's out of battery. That's my excuse. Oh, it doesn't turn on, it's out of battery. But, the fact is when Dan sometimes works from home, and if he's on a call or something, he will give the phone. But Philip craves the phone. Like, he wants
So
that
he knows
phone.
the power.
He knows
Wow,
the
the power
power.
of the
Can
phone.
you? How long do you think you can ward it off, though? As he's at 4.
I'm really hoping that I'm planning on not giving my kids cell phones, and y'all can hold me to it, until they are freshmen in high school. And I'm going to really try.
We got to go in a second, but Ali is from East Houston and a teacher.
Oh, yeah.
Ali.
What's on your mind today?
Well, I completely agree with the policy guys. As a teacher in HISD, it is so hard to teach, especially when you have full classrooms and you have to deal with kids with different needs and be distracted by cell phones. Also, the continuous use of AI also helps to really distract away from the kids really getting and walking away from full instruction. So I know people have concerns about safety, but trust, teachers are trained, we're well prepared. There are emergency responses and needs, but the amount of fights and other things that come with the cell phones just do not warrant during instruction, because for years, many of us went to school without them as well.
Yeah. Right. Ollie, really quick before we let you go, I'm just curious, the idea of them not having access during lunchtime or recess or whatever they call break times, do you agree with that too?
I mean, here's the thing. That's where you get a lot of the fights. The kids are not in the classroom. They're all together. Also, too, various school. I mean, vaping. The kids can text each other and say, meet up here, go here, especially when you're in the older level with, like, high school students, and they may be allowed to kind of maneuver differently that way. So I really think, honestly, during the time, it really, when they go home, they have the weekend, all these times, and before and after school. But during that time period, they really should just keep off the phones and not be distracted.
Great
because
insight
after lunch,
on
they're
that.
still going back to class.
Thank you for that,
Thank you.
point of view.
And we have one more question. Caller, Tony. Tony, welcome to Hello Houston. Tony's from Montrose. What is your comment or question?
Hi, I'm a teacher, and I just wanted to say that to to say that it's okay to just say to students, like, okay, everybody, time to put your phones away, let's start class, or okay, everybody, power down, let's start class, that is not, like, we are told stand at the door, collect cell phones, we have them put them in numbered slots, the students have backup cell phones, they hand you an empty case. It wastes a lot of instructional time. I think cell phones in school is the problem, right? But, like, that's a societal level shift. But as a teacher, like, just to say to kids, okay, time to put them away, like, that's not how it works.
Okay.
Like,
So are they being banned from campus, period?
So you'll have to collect
they're
them?
not. And even if kids are told, like, don't bring it, power it off, I've had students who have a backup cell phone and then another backup cell phone. They have Apple Watch. Like, I don't know what the solution is. I'm just saying, like, it is a very difficult, complex problem. And I think for a lot of teachers listening to just hear, like, okay, everybody put away your phones. Like, it's not like that.
Accurate, sure.
Double secret suspension doesn't even work anymore, right? Flo from Southside. Hi, Flo. What's up? What are your thoughts?
I'm a substitute teacher, or I was one, at Santa Fe High School during the mass shooting. And
I'm sorry.
I understand the issue with the phones being out. It is a huge issue. However, after what I went through and experienced, I believe a child should have their phone on them in some fashion, be able to access it. Kids were in classrooms. Their teacher was killed. They had no way to get help but through their cell phone.
Well, you know, the voice of experience is the strongest voice. So thank
Flo,
you for
thank
that.
you so much for
and
sharing
I'm so
your
sorry you had to
experience
go
with
through
us.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there you go. And now we're back to square one, aren't we?
It is.
They're getting up backup phones after backup phone. They're not banned from campus. And at the end of the day, if you've been through it, you're glad they actually have them.
Right. And it is a complex situation, and we appreciate everybody's perspective and for calling in and sharing. And again, everyone is welcome to join the conversation. Coming up on Hello Houston, we get some helpful tips to get your family school ready with Dr. Patel Mehul, a pediatrician with Memorial Hermann. This is News 88.7. With federal funding cuts, Houston Public Media has lost $2.2 million annually. In response, we have launched the Resiliency Fund, an urgent initiative to protect the programs and services you rely on. That includes PBS Kids, that provides free educational programming to children and families across Greater Houston. Your support of the Resiliency Fund helps keep this vital service accessible to our community. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
This week on This American Life.
Ready? Here we go.
1 million people go to the Iowa State Fair. Some for the rides, some for 4-H, some to sell stuff, and some...
So you have to shoot 10 balloons and change your gun and come back across the timer in 9 seconds. That's less than a second per shot.
We go to the fair this week.
It's American Life tonight at 9 o'clock.
I'm Scott Tong from Public Radio's midday news magazine Here and Now. We bring you all the news that happens between the morning headlines and the afternoon wrap-up, plus conversations with authors and artists, stories that affect you, maybe a story about you. So join us for NPR's midday news magazine Here and Now.
Here and Now, every Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. on News 88.7.
Researchers in South Africa are testing a new way to fight rhino poachers.
I was asked if it was possible to poison a rhino horn with radioactive material, and I said theoretically yes, but I'm never going to do it because I'm quite keen not going to prison.
I'm Juana Summers. How radioactive rhino horns could save the species on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
It's coming up this afternoon at 3 o'clock.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Summer break is winding down, and that means it's almost time to head back to school. Whether your child is starting kindergarten or gearing up for high school, a smooth transition can make all the difference for a successful year. Experts say now is the time to start easing into routines. Think sleep schedules, healthy eating, mental health check-ins, and making sure those all-important vaccinations are up to date, those back-to-school ones. Joining us today with helpful tips to get your family school ready is Dr. Patel Mehul, a pediatrician with Memorial Hermann. Dr. Mehul, welcome back to Hello Houston.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So as we look at, we're talking routines and things like that, what are some of the things, we talked about checklists early, what are some of just the basic steps parents should start thinking about right now?
So, every district starts a little differently in Houston. We have HISD and then we have some of the surrounding districts, but I think most of them are starting kind of mid-August. So like I think you just mentioned, kind of getting back into the sleep schedule is really important because we know summertime, we kind of get off of that a little bit, trying to get to bed roughly the same time every night, trying to get up in the morning around the time that you would be getting up for your regular school day is important. And then like you said, start planning your meals out. I think the tax-free holidays coming up. So if you haven't done your back to school shopping, get some of that done. But really focusing on sleep and nutrition is important as you're kind of transitioning into that first week of school.
We were talking about anxiety at work just a couple segments ago. There's got to be a lot of anxiety, especially with kids going to new schools and going from 5th grade to 6th grade or 8th grade to 9th grade. What can a parent do to help with those situations?
So, sometimes it's easy, right? Because there's a lot of kids from the 5th grade moving up with you. Now, if you're switching schools or switching districts, going to private school, and vice versa, then it can be harder, right? Because the child's going in with no friends at all or doesn't know anybody. Right. So one thing to really look into, high school for sure, look into the open house and see what activities are available for your child to join. Because people always think, we're Texas, so sports, but there's lots of clubs you can also join if you're not like an athlete, where you can also kind of meet people in a smaller setting. Makes it a little bit less, kind of fearful when you're not dealing with a big group of kids, but you kind of get to meet just a few kids that have the same interest as you. So joining clubs is a really good idea when you're starting a new school.
Well, let me stop you there because a lot of the clubs, certainly the gay straight clubs and a lot of clubs that are DEI and have certain international flair to them have been prohibited this year by the Texas legislature. So I think a lot of kids who have been counting on those particular clubs are not going to have them. So this could become a real issue, don't you think?
It can, right? But I also think it's important for, if that was the club that you were thinking about joining, there's other parts to your personality, your identity, your interests, your hobbies. So although those clubs unfortunately may not be available now because of the legislature, you still have to be able to find other interests. And like I said, it doesn't have to be athletics, because I think there's a lot of emphasis on that just being in the state we're in. But like I said, there's still music programs, there's still robotics, chess clubs, debate clubs, and other intellectual clubs that you can still join that would give you an opportunity to meet some of those friends that might not be as easy to meet if you just walked into the classroom of like 30 or 40 children.
You mentioned the phrase of the state we're in, which makes me think of then state regulations and all of that going down, which takes me to vaccines. Where are we on what needs to be done? What are still the vaccines you need to get into school? Where is there confusion on all of this? And for parents who are not feeling vaccines, what alternatives do they have?
So, number one, we over and over, we can stress the safety of the vaccines. The vaccine schedule has not changed despite, people keep thinking legislatures changed and politicians have changed. The vaccine schedule has not changed. The vaccines that we give at, your 4-year visit right before you start kindergarten, the 11-year visit before you start middle school, and the 17 or 18-year visit, depending on your pediatrician, before you start colleges have not changed. They're the same vaccines that we've done for several years. So in terms of that, nothing has changed. In terms of, parents that are wary about that, your options there, of course, are seeking like religious exemption or something, those routes. Although I will say, safety is important. And we saw over the summer and in the spring, how the measles outbreak, really affected a lot of families in Texas. So hopefully, talk to your pediatrician if you have questions. That's what we're here for. But hopefully people will be, convinced that these vaccines are safe for your children and are really important from a public safety perspective.
And just a reminder, as we have this conversation, always check with your own healthcare provider. When you have any questions, we have to speak generally because we're talking to a full audience. Your healthcare provider knows you best.
Dr. Patel, when we're talking about these different things and routines, sleep schedules, how important is a sleep schedule for a student all the way from kids that are taking naps to high schoolers?
It's incredibly important. So much of your mental health actually, is affected by your sleep. And that includes your sleep hygiene, meaning when I do fall asleep, how many hours am I actually staying asleep? And to your sleep schedule, which is like, okay, I'm sleeping at 9-10 p.m., getting up and getting my, recommended 8 hours, because the 8-hour thing has gotten really fluid over the years. Some people are like, well, I think I function fine with 6. I function okay with 7. No, I need all 10, So, you have to figure out what's right for you. Some people do function very well with 7, but I can tell you, nobody is going to function at their best if their sleep is interrupted. So what helps you get uninterrupted sleep is having good sleep hygiene. So that's the no screen time before bed, no caffeine before bed, no sugary things before bed. And then going to sleep at the same time every night is actually really important. Your brain circadian rhythm is dictated by, you setting that pattern for yourself.
It is interesting to me how easy it is for people to fall into patterns, which we sometimes hear certain people have certain patterns. They are morning people or evening people or things like that, and that the school system puts you on a rigid schedule that may not naturally match with you. Is that true or a fallacy? And if you are one of those later set individuals, how do you make sure you're not going to school unrested without the proper rest? What can really be done in these situations?
Yeah, and to add to that, on top of even your school schedule, you have these kids that are in extracurricular activities. So then there's, their days like 10, 11 hours long plus homework if you're in like AP courses and things like that. So it's definitely hard. And a lot of the, I'm a morning person, I'm a late person. Some of that's built by habit, right? This is what I've always done. So this is where I feel like I function the best. Now, some of it could be hormone related because there is like a cortisol release and that could be released at different times of the night for certain, certain individuals. But in general, the way you kind of have to combat that is once you know your schedule, you know your activities, stay on top of it, know your calendar so you don't have surprises, and then cater your sleep schedule accordingly. And if that does mean, going to sleep a little earlier, then you may have to do that on some nights.
What are you seeing in terms of ADD? We didn't really grow up. I didn't really grow up with ADD. I don't think they knew how to diagnose it. So my question is it still being diagnosed? And about what age? Is there a certain age that it tends to begin to show up with kids?
Yeah, so it's definitely being diagnosed. And, to some may argue it's being overdiagnosed, which I would somewhat agree with. But it definitely is something that affects a lot of children. So, we will typically screen, and again, this is a general radio show, so I cannot speak on every doctor.
Right. That's okay.
But in general, pediatricians, psychiatrists will generally start screening kids at 5 and 6 if, parents and teachers are having concerns, right? So one thing with ADHD that people don't always understand is you cannot be ADHD at home and be an angel at school. You cannot be ADHD at school and be an angel at home. ADHD is a mental health condition, so that it should be affecting the child in every environment that they're in. So, if a child's, really rambunctious at home, but the teacher's like, oh no, she sits there like a peach, then
it might be a different issue.
It might be a different issue. Exactly. And vice versa, right? So that's why it's important to discuss with your pediatrician. So when I say we'll do the evaluation, most of it's actually a conversation because there is no blood test or anything like that. There's no, imaging for ADHD. It's all subjective, but it needs to come from multiple people that know the individual.
And how do you treat it?
So there's multiple ways. Number one, we will develop IEP/504 plans with the schools. certain accommodation that the kid may benefit from.
Right.
As they get older, medication will also be an option. And then, of course, there's side effects and a discussion that has to be had there too.
You know, when we're
But then there's cognitive. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
There's
Please
cognitive
finish.
behavioral therapy. I know a lot of parents read about this on Google and other places like that. The problem with cognitive behavioral therapy, it's very difficult to find. It's very hard for insurance to cover it, and a lot of it's self-pay, and most of the families have a really hard time affording it. So that is a problem.
You know, Dr. Patel, you also mentioned that check-in and conversations, and you said how ADD it's a mental health situation. And when we look at students and kids, we understand that check-ins as a parent look very different whenever you have an elementary student and you have a high school student, even your middle schooler, it's going to look very different. What are some easy, questions or ways parents can check in with their child if they feel like they're maybe not connecting?
Honestly, the best way to connect with children is usually doing an activity with them that you can kind of talk while you're doing the activity. Elementary school kid, it might be sitting down and coloring with them and then asking them questions about their day. Oh, really? Is that what happened? Oh, so why did he do that to you? Oh, what did you do back? Why did you do it that way? While they're coloring, so they don't feel like they're on the spot, but they're actually more likely to let more information slip out if they're distracted by an activity while they're talking to you. And I don't mean watching TV with them. I mean like something sit down where you're interacting with the child. As they get older, they're going to get more and more. Well, it depends. Half the kids, some kids will talk to their parents about problems. Some kids are going to get much more standoffish. So then at that point, it's the parent has to dive in a little bit more and say, hey, everything good? Anything bothering you? You know your kid the best. So if you feel like their behavior is a little off and it's lasting for more than just a day or two, ask them about it. Like, hey, you seem like you're really tired. Are you okay? You seem like you were a little off at dinner last night. That kind of thing.
Do you see a certain age? I think that I didn't lose my kid, but when he went to 6th grade, that's when you get the don't hug me in front of everybody, don't hold my hand, don't tell everybody you love me, and all of that. And then they come back when they need a car. So, but
tuition.
That's about it. So what ages are you looking at? Has that changed at all? Because I'm really getting to peer pressure.
That's really hard because it's really child dependent. Because I've seen 5 and 6-year-olds that don't want to hug their parents outside the preschool, or they want to hug their parent in the car before they actually go into the school. And then I've had high school people that are very happy, like running up to their parents after a game and like giving them a hug. So I don't think there's a certain age, but I think it depends on the circle that your child's in, right? Like if they're more likely to be teased and be sensitive to that, they're more likely to make that gap with you.
And Dr. Patel, do you have any sound advice for maybe a parent whose kid doesn't want to give them a hug anymore?
Get them a car.
Hug them at home.
That is so true, though. I mean, it
hurts equally.
Yeah. And am I wrong? That cell phone is a good disciplinary feature. It's that cell phone. Yeah, take away that cell phone, they'll do anything you want.
That's a great segue. Dr. Patel, are there any latest American Pediatric Association regulations in regards to, or recommendations rather, in screen time?
Yes. So in general, so there's not like a recommendation for older children. So middle school, high school, there isn't one. It's really hard to make one because how do you define screen time? Because you can define screen time as like your time on TikTok and Instagram. You can define screen time as anytime I'm looking at a computer. And a lot of times now, even in the classroom, they're looking at an iPad or laptop. So that's a hard one. For young children, though, because this is where a lot of our speech delay is coming from, anyone under the age of 2 really should be 0. Unless you really need a distraction for like 10 minutes to like use the restroom or something. 2 and up, we say no more than 90 minutes.
And when do you say, our whole show is screen time, right? So when do you say it is what it is?
That is a hard one. And again, it depends if you're going to count schoolwork or not.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Let me ask a question. I don't know if this fits into it and if you can address it or not. We grew up with the television and we were watching TV a lot. It became a de facto babysitter in a lot of ways. Is that more dangerous, or is current screen time of tablets and cell phones any different than being engaged in watching television? And why the difference of that distraction?
It's very different because one thing with TV, it did teach you some level of patience, right? Because you had to wait during those commercials. The children today are so used to getting what they want the minute they turn that TV or that cell phone or tablet on. Mm-hmm. So my recommendation, I always tell parents, if you got to give them screen time, do it on the TV. Don't give them a device that they have complete control over, because that way it's not as entertaining. They don't get to choose exactly what they want every time. That's not what the reality of life is. You don't get exactly what you want when you want it. Mm-hmm. So I always tell my patients, if you got to give them screen time, use the TV, because that way they don't have complete control.
It's probably what's killing TV.
Well, yeah, and it's so interesting you say that, because as somebody who grew up in the 90s, I watched Nickelodeon and all this, and I remember my parents constantly telling me, turn the TV off.
My dad called it the boob tube. Quit watching the boob tube.
My dad called it the idiot box, Yeah,
right.
He would like, turn that off. Trash
Turns
in, trash out. And here we are now, like, the TV is the good option.
No, a good point. Hadn't thought about it in that regards. Things that you notice as we come to the end of this, things that you notice that maybe we haven't hit on that parents should be aware of as they get ready to go back to school. You're in this a lot more than we are.
Sure. The other big one I always like to emphasize with my patient is nutrition. We're running into a lot of problems with what kids are eating, and people love to blame the school and this cafeteria food, but it's not just what they're eating at school, it's also what they're eating at home, right? So because they're only eating most of the time, one meal a day at school, maybe breakfast. So really, use the summers, teach your kids how to use the kitchen, teach them how to use vegetables, use fruits. We always say shop the perimeter of the store, right? That's where your meat, your produce, and your dairy is. Try to avoid the middle aisles where all the canned stuff is, or all the boxed and frozen stuff is, because it's really important for your kids to know what's healthy, what's not, and also be able to pack their own lunches and things like that. Chores have become a thing that's of the past. Kids don't do chores anymore. Make them do chores. Get some labor out of them.
Yes.
Get some labor out of them.
Speaking my language.
That's why we have children. I'd forgotten that
Dr.
rule.
Mehul Patel is a pediatrician with Memorial Hermann. Dr. Patel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. And coming up, we'll talk about how Texas is a little more like California than you think. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Federal funding for public media has been cut. In response, we're creating Houston Public Media's Resiliency Fund. Donations made toward the fund will directly counter the loss of the $2.2 million in federal funds that were cut annually and strengthen our station's foundation to provide our services into the future. Contributing to this fund is easy and quick and makes all the difference to our station. Help build the Resiliency Fund now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
It's on tonight at 10 o'clock.
On Fresh Air, you'll hear conversations with entertaining people like Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson.
I gave him one take, one sound, one voice, and that was it. Blah, 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 blah. And Matt, his eyebrows went up, his tongue came out of his mouth. He's like, oh my God, that's him, that's Bart, that's him. You got the part.
The most interesting people in show business tell their stories on Fresh Air.
Fresh Air, weekdays at 8 p.m. on News 88.7.
Support comes from the Dan L. Duncan Comprehensive Cancer Center at Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center, offering comprehensive cancer care that is compassionate, personalized, and driven by clinical research. More at stlukeshealth.org/cancer.
Support comes from electricityplans.com, helping Houstonians find electricity plans based on home energy usage with tools to compare rates. Enrollment details and more at electricityplans.com.
Support comes from Moody Mansion, the restored 28,000 square foot mansion on Galveston's Broadway, furnished with original items and decor from the early 1900s. Open daily for tours. More at moodymansion.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
So there's a slogan, "Don't California My Texas," to express concerns that the influx of Californians moving here is dramatically changing the Lone Star State's culture and politics, but leading to a lot of home sales, I'll say that. While many Texans, including the state's most prominent politicians, have espoused the slogan, "Don't California My Texas," if you look close enough, you may find that there are certain influences California has had on Texas and its politicians. So joining us now to share his thoughts about this very topic is journalist and Texas Monthly contributor Christopher Hoax. Christopher, welcome to Hello Houston. We're glad you're here.
Hey guys, good to be here.
Well, let's talk about this. The old Rick Perry and that group of 2000 and 2005, they were like, no, we are not California, we're Texas. And now they're kind of saying, maybe we more or less are California. What do you think?
Sure. I mean, it's been interesting over the last 10, 15 years covering Texas politics. I mean, California has kind of been Texas's great rival for decades. And for Texas Republicans, they really didn't like a couple things about California. They didn't like that it was left wing, obviously, but they also didn't like that California used its power, its market power, to inflict its own rules and regulations to the rest of the country. And they like to tout Texas as a free place, a place without those regulations where people were coming in droves. I think what we've seen in the last few years is Texas lawmakers didn't so much like that California was doing regulation, but the wrong kind of regulation. And they've been kind of exploring ways that they can use their power and the power of the Texas economy and Texas government to bring Texas regulations, push them across the country, and also kind of find innovative ways to control what Texans are doing. And that's been a market shift.
Well, I liked your Texas Monthly article, and you also made the point that in California, every sign you see says this might cause cancer. If you're pregnant, don't get near it, kind of thing, because of these regulations you're talking about. And that was one of the things that we were sort of, we're the wild, wild west. We do what we want. Don't tell me what's good for me and what's not. But as we have seen in this legislature, no, we are going to tell you what's good for you and what's not. Is that the kind of shift that we're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is playing out in a couple different ways, but one thing that was shocking that you did see in this legislature was they put some labeling requirements in place that sounded very much like what the California State Assembly might do. In the future, if you pick up a bag of Doritos at a gas station in Texas, there's going to be a little warning label on it that says that it contains ingredients that are flagged by the European Union's regulators. And the idea that the Texas legislature is looking at the European Union and Canada and Australia for guidance about how to regulate food consumption, and then put a warning label on products that come from out of state, and in the process force this Texas warning label to be on these food products wherever they're sold in the country, was kind of a shocking thing to watch Texas Republicans do. The law may have some good arguments in favor of it. It's just not something that Texas Republicans would have ever done before the last few years.
Can I flip this conversation a little bit in light of what's going on in the news currently? Is California becoming a bit more like Texas? If we're going to be doing the redistricting and they then follow and do redistricting, are we impacting them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been impacting each other for decades, and both sides kind of like it this way. Texans get to point at all of the awful things California is doing and distinguish themselves. And Gavin Newsom for years has been, putting up billboards around the state and doing other things and saying, if you hate Texas abortion laws, come to San Diego. It's better here. So they've always kind of been playing off of each other in a useful way. I think what's changed is that Texas Republicans used to have the sense that they were different from California because we were free. And recently, I think they've been getting a little bit closer to realizing that they actually like the power to regulate. They just like to do it in a different way.
And when we're looking at the power of regulation, we saw a lot of legislation this past legislative session about cinema and movies. And oftentimes when you think of kind of that of movies and stars, you think of Hollywood and California. So how is that playing out right here in our own state?
Sure. Yeah, that's a big part of it too. I for a long time, Texas has had a film incentive program, and it's been sort of bipartisan. People in both parties have kept it going year after year. What's changed in the last few years is, I think, Republicans used to be more skeptical of it than Democrats. They used to say, "Why is the state of Texas funding film productions?" But there was a realization in the last few years that Texas could funnel a lot of money had money to spare into film productions and influence film production in the state to be more in line with the values that the legislature has. So the Texas legislature has dramatically increased the amount of money that is going into film incentives, several $100 million every 2 years now. And as part of that, they have a Texas Heritage Program, which is supposed to fund film productions that are in line with Texas values. And those Texas values obviously are decided by the governor. They're supposed to make family-friendly productions that uphold family values and present a positive portrait of Texas, which I think will depend a lot on who the governor puts in place to decide what those Texas values are. There is a awareness in the legislature that they can distort cultural production by using this giant purse of money that they have, which is, again, new. You would not have seen Texas lawmakers do this 10 years ago. Another big thing is California is famous for having very aggressive trial lawyers. And 20 or 30 years ago, we started to chip away at the power of Texas trial lawyers. It was a big part of how Republicans took over in this state. There was a group called Texans for Lawsuit Reform, very well funded, supported Republican candidates, and they wanted to do tort reform. And recently you've seen kind of crazy lawsuits slip back into Texas law. There's an enthusiasm to help people sue each other, which is also new in Texas. And it used to be there were a few bills every legislature that created a new reason to sue somebody else. And this session, there were over 1,000 of them filed. Not many of them passed, but it represents a big change in how lawmakers are thinking about the point of politics, what government is supposed to do.
Well, and don't forget tech. And there's Silicon Valley, and now all these tech people have moved to Austin. And I mean, Elon Musk, I never thought of as a Texan. But he's sort of taking over. He's taking it over.
Yeah. You know, I just want to remind everyone we're talking with Christopher Hooks from Texas Monthly. We're talking about the calification of Texas. I can't even say it outright. And if you want to join the conversation, 713-440-8870. We had a comment from Alex Garza on YouTube who really gets to the heart of the whole thing. Get those In-N-Out burgers out of here. We got Whataburger. Is this that kind of sentiment about let's not get California-ized?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm with them. In-N-Out, totally overrated. Whataburger, Pizzeria here in Austin, we got better burgers.
And Bluebell, we got better Bluebell.
We got better Bluebell.
Yep,
better
for sure.
ice cream, yeah.
When you look at it from Elon Musk's point, way up in the stratosphere, and you look down at California and Texas, are we really that different ultimately, or is it more in the dressing we put on us, but underneath it all, we're the same?
No, I think that's a great point. I think there's kind of a narcissism of small differences thing going on here. They call it in psychology. I mean, these are both big states which have had an outsized hold on the American imagination for a long time, and they've done kind of similar economic development. And there's a lot of things that bind them together. Texas doesn't have a place like Big Sur, but we have a lot of good stuff too.
I have been corrected thanks to Celeste. Californication.
Wasn't that a HBO show?
It was
the
a song.
Californication of Texas. Are other states feeling this too? States like New York and Illinois or Arizona or Florida? Or is this something unique between us and California?
I think what we have going on is a little bit unique. I mean, it's been so long lasting. Texas and California have been looking at each other. To be honest, Texas has been doing more looking at California than the other way around. But for a long time, we've seen them as a bigger, richer, more successful state. And we've had a little bit of a chip on our shoulder. But I think that's going away as Texas gets bigger too, more prominent. And for the last 30 or 40 years, at least, as California has this hold on the American imagination as a very left-wing place, and Texas has a hold on the American imagination as a very right-wing place. We've been fighting on that dynamic too.
Well, and even more so now that we have this redistricting issue, and California is saying, bring it. If you want a redistricting issue, we'll give you one. So even politically, we're still looking at each other just a little differently.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's great for Gavin Newsom to be able to punch out at the Californians. And Texans are very focused on what California is doing and not so much on what like New York or other blue states are doing. We're the best of enemies.
Christopher Hooks is a journalist and Texas Monthly contributor. Thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of our Wednesday show. We want to thank you for listening to Hello Houston. We will be back tomorrow with more conversations. This is News 88.7.
Go have a root beer float.
And avocado on your Whataburger.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menninger, Jen Altine, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from John Moore, helping with plumbing, electrical, and air conditioning repairs, including out-of-warranty units since 1965. Details